the end of the 120 turn, and this is how things shook out. The British had the first chit pull and maneuvered some more elements of the 1st Division in their attempt to hold Elvina. That does not go too well. Over the course of the turn, they took quite a few casualties. A number of light companies disappeared, and then they did have one battalion take over 50% losses and rout. The next chit pull was leader activation, and so they decided they were going to bring one of their reserve division up. So they're doing some kedging here, trying to bring some of their forces into this village here of Oza. I guess that's how it's pronounced. Next was the reinforcement phase, and the French continued to bring their reinforcements in. This included, of course, the cavalry that was the part of the light cavalry here that just came on the board. They are making towards the town of Santa Margarita. That is their destination. And then, of course, this other dragoon division is making its way towards Elvina and should be approaching the flank of the British within a turn or two, making things uncomfortable for them. The next phase, of course, then was the rally. The British brought up some of their units, including one of the 2nd Division's brigades that had been stationed further away, trying to bring it into this area here, Crawford, into this zone, kind of tying between the 1st and 2nd Divisions. And then finally the French Corps activated. They moved up their skirmishers along this line and their artillery, trying to do some damage to the 2nd Division, soften them up a little bit. There's not much left of the light companies of the 2nd Division. And then here, using their artillery to pretty good effect, and then their skirmishers. They do have one battalion that has routed, but otherwise they've got the 2nd Division is now coming into position here at Elvina and should be able to put pressure on that element of the 1st Division of the British and force them back. So at this point in time, that's probably what will happen next. Now, someone had asked in comments what my strategy is. Usually when I'm playing these solo games, I'm trying to see if I can't do things a little bit better than the historical counterparts. So in this particular battle, the French didn't really push the British very much, and so I'm trying to do a little bit more, push them a little harder, see if the French might actually be able to get a victory out of this. To that end, I have the Corps and the Corps artillery trying to do as much damage to the British as I can and keep them engaged. I know that I've got some more cavalry coming in, particularly here along this road, and that cavalry then can be used to attack these British positions. Meanwhile, I've got the other cavalry that can kind of come up around and help turn the British line over on this side. And then finally, with the light cavalry, the idea was to send them out over this way, the idea being to harass the British, maybe threaten their lines of communication, maybe divert some of the troops that they might otherwise send as reinforcements, and to possibly, get some units here into the coastal positions here at either Santa Lucia, maybe one of the dismounted dragoons, or even better yet, over here to the Castillo de San Diego. That light cavalry division has a pretty good leader and has the potential for some initiative, and maybe I can use them to run across and cut the road for the British. The French have some greater command capacity, and though the British don't have a bad command capacity, with the British just trying to kind of hold the French off, do some damage to them, but it looks like I'm going to have to start pulling back a little bit. This position, I don't know that it's going to work out so well for the British, so they might have to come back and pull back towards this town here, and put up a defense along this part of the road with these two divisions. So that's kind of what I'm looking at this point. Well, we're at the end of the 140 turn. The French drew the first chit, and so they were able to get a jump on the Brits. They came around this side of the British line and made things very uncomfortable for them, forcing one of the British units to disorder, and it's now routed and took quite a few hits. Along the line, almost all of the other light units have been eliminated, and then Manningham's brigade is just down to this one unit of the 26th and this other unit of the 3rd, which disordered. They're both in pretty bad shape. They've suffered quite a bit from the French artillery that's here, and then the various French light units have been doing a good job. The French then just kept up the pressure over here against the 1st Division, inflicting some damage from the artillery and light units. Of course, then we had the rally phase. The British were bringing up some of their battalions and their brigades, and then some of their brigades over here were coming up into the situation. The British finally got their movement phase then, and they brought the Guard infantry battalions around the right flank to kind of help stave things off over there. That was, of course, before Manningham's brigade disintegrated, and that's kind of where things are for them. The French cavalry, dragoons, are coming in along this side, and that's going to cause some trouble for the British. And then the light company is making its way towards Santa Margarita. So that's where things are for the moment. We'll report back. Here's the situation at the end of the 2 o'clock turn. The British have pulled back from Elvina. There was just too much artillery fire, and they were not in a very good position, so they have drawn back towards Eris, back towards the main road. And so the Guard has formed up in line over here. Most of the light companies have gotten blown away all along the line. And the 2nd Division had some success with their fire against the French over here. So they might push forward a little bit to maybe take out that battery or some way stymie the French. Meanwhile, reinforcements keep coming up along the road, kind of to take a position along here on the right flank, where there's really nothing hanging out there. So we'll try to put some of those units from the reserve into that zone. Now, the French move forward. Their skirmishers continue to use the skirmish fire and their artillery to slowly whittle away at the British, and otherwise not anything yet significant. Just waiting, biding their time for the British to get a little weaker and maybe use some of the cavalry that's coming in. They received an additional dragoon division over here that started to come in. The other dragoon division is now deployed and will start getting into position maybe to conduct a charge against this flank of the British. Meanwhile, the French Light Division is almost reached its destination at Santa Margherita, and there's not a whole lot left here on the backfield. So the British might have to move some of those elements of the 3rd Division forward to push back against that cavalry, or at least to protect the coastal road. And that's how it is.